Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about the bid for Rasmus Hojlund being confirmed, talk about Sofian Amrabat and where that deal is at, talk about some of the outs that could be coming up, including a potential bid for Scott Mctominay from West Ham, talk about the match last night against Wrexham and tonight against Real Madrid. So let's get into it. All right, so first and foremost, as of last week, I was told that United would be looking to make their first official offer for Rasmus Hojlund, or first offer. I don't know how the wording on these official things are, but first offer for Rasmus Hojlund early in this week. As of Monday night, I was told that that offer was planned and what the fee was. I tweeted out that it would be around 50 million euros plus 10 to 12 or so in add-ons. I understand that it was just waiting for kind of sign off or approval to be able to communicate that. All of this is being done via intermediaries and other people involved, as of course, for any in-person stuff, because John Murtaugh's in San Diego, or was last night, and will of course be with the team probably in Texas for the Madrid game. Hence, of course, why I mentioned a while back, not a massive rush. They're not expecting any further signings right now to join on the tour in the US, so anything major will get done once everybody is back in Manchester. So Fabrizio Romano tweeted today that first verbal offer has gone in, right on target, 50 million euros plus 10 million euros in add-ons. I don't believe he said whether it had been accepted, rejected, all of that. I don't believe accepted, of course, or it would be, deals been reached and all of that. And let's see. But I believe it's not acceptable, but this is kind of what we expected. United, their strategy here, which makes a lot of sense, is make an offer, a good offer, but one, you need to see that there's going to be some movement from Atalanta. As I understand it, United are not going to pay 70, 80 million euros for Rasmus Hojlund. They need Atalanta to move on this a bit and to show a willingness to negotiate. The will of the player is very much to join Manchester United. He strongly wants it. He's been waiting for them to make an agreement. It's what he wants to do. You make that 60 million euros offer. As I understand it, Atalanta wants 60 million euros guaranteed plus some add-ons. So you say they're about 10 million euros off on this deal. But now it's what's going to happen following this verbal offer is much like talks with Chelsea, much like talks with Inter. After this kind of verbal offer, they're going to come together and say, are we going to move on this? Is there going to be some movement? Are you willing to negotiate on this, or are you just going to hold firm at that price and not enter any negotiations at all? If they are willing to negotiate, and it's likely that United feel they are willing to at least talk further and adjust a bit, or they wouldn't have made that verbal offer, then they will get together further and likely come to some sort of compromise. My expectation in the end is it'll be something like the Mason Mount offer come end of the day, where you're getting more like maybe 58 to 60 million euros guaranteed, or just under 60, with a little bit of add-ons, but tough add-ons, things that, could be triggered, but are likely to be a bit more over time. 5 to 10 million there. So 55 plus 10 in the end, 50 plus 15, 52 plus 12, something in that range is likely where this deal will end up at the end of the day in order for it to happen. And I do expect, I'm still optimistic that it will. So again, just to recap that in brief, United have made a verbal offer of 50 million euros plus 10 million euros in add-ons. They're interested in it, but have not at this point in time, accepted or rejected or anything like that. And next, with talks happening, they will likely want to come to some kind of compromise and see what can be done. And United are gaining in some sort of optimism on there. I've heard there was progress in these discussions, and it's looking pretty good. At the same time, there is a complication, which is that PSG are looking at it as well and saying, we're interested, we might want to make an offer, and they're looking to include, potentially, as I hear it, Hugo Ekitike into that deal. Atalanta have signed, of course, another striker, but they're potentially losing to 2 or 3 if Hojlund departs, 3 strikers potentially. So they do maybe need another player. It's an interesting bid. the will of the player is going to be important here. He's going to have to request and stick firm with United, because if he opens the door to PSG, then that's going to push those negotiations higher and higher, and probably to a point where United are not going to want to be involved, where they don't have certainty that the player is going to come to them. That's been a huge, huge tenet of improving things, especially since the De Jong situation last year, and making sure that they get who they want to get. So the next few days will be important as talks kind of continue to see if there's a willingness from both sides to come to terms. And if the talks continue in that vein, you'll probably see some optimism. I do expect that's the route that it's going to go, and it will kind of go that way. But I wouldn't expect, anything imminently on this. Probably another week before you start seeing some real progress here. There may be, again, more talks moving closer, but another week, a little longer before things start to really move on this deal, if it's going to happen. And I mean move towards actual completion, obviously, because you've got the games, then they're going to fly back after Las Vegas, and then it will be then in person. I think it could probably press towards completion after that. In terms of Sofyan Amrabat, there's obviously been a lot of reports, ideas that it's close, that it's almost done, that it's this and that and the other. Not the case. United are well informed on this. They've had dialogue with his brother agent since January. They know what the deal would cost. They know what would be necessary for it, but they're not doing anything on it yet. There's no terms that have been agreed. They know the price, and what the information I have is this. They know the price that has been granted. It's higher than they want to pay for the player, even if they were to pursue a deal right now. So they're not on the verge of making an agreement. They're not on the verge of making a bid. They're not on the verge of making an offer. They're not on the verge of making a signing here. They need to know exactly how much they have to spend at striker. They need to know what kind of outs can be done, and they will have to be done before they come back to this, and then they will need the price to come down. However, it's a deal that I think will happen. I do. I think it has good potential, but it is going to depend on outs, and we'll talk about that in the next section. It has good potential to happen. It is a player that United really like, that they've had dialogue with, that I know for a fact they are very interested in. It's just a matter of the right dominoes going down in place to get the deal to occur. And so far, so good this summer. The right things have been happening. Outs have been occurring. The Henderson deal will likely need to be wrapped up here soon. Doesn't help United a ton this summer because it's looking like a loan plus obligation, but it's a sale at the end of the day. Eric Bailly to Saudi. But then the biggest factor is going to be McFred. What happens to McFred? When you look at the midfield, you have Mount, Bruno, Casemiro, and Eriksen, who are going nowhere. You have Kobbie Mainoo, who's impressing, who's going to play another part in the Madrid game this evening, one way or another, who's going to stick around, who's not going to go on loan, who's going to be around the first team. That gives you 5 midfielders. Then you have Scott and you have Fred. It's too many. And you have Hannibal, who we'll talk about in youth in a minute. You need departures to clear space. You need departures for players to go. At this point, Mctominay may not play very much, and that's fine. And Fred may not play very much, and that's fine. And that's a big part of why they're potentially being shifted. And a big part of this happening comes down to, a big part of this happening comes down to the player. McTominay is not going to see a lot of minutes. And a big part comes down to valuation. United are looking to try to get at least like 15 to 20 million for Fred. I think it's a very fair deal when you look at the price for a lot of players. He's a good player. He's a very quality player. There's obviously interest from Turkey. There's interest from Fulham. They're going to need to get a good price on it because it's better to have him as a utility for one more year than to sell him for peanuts and not have a player that you need and be forced because of injuries to play like Mainoo, Eriksen, McTominay in a game. It's just not fair to the players in that case. When you need a bit more energy and a bit more balance, he's one of the players that will move. And McTominay the same. For United, McTominay is not the best fit. For some clubs, McTominay is actually a great fit and could do very well for them, like West Ham, who are interested. So there's interest from West Ham. United have named a price around £45 million. West Ham aren't out of it. They're interested. They're looking. And there's potentially talks to go on there. So what will need to happen is likely Fred sold and likely McTominay sold, but not 100% for that Amrabat deal to occur, but it's also going to depend on what they end up paying for Rasmus Hojlund. If they end up having to pay, 60 plus 10 in the end and max out what they spend there, they're going to need probably to move Fred and McTominay to get a deal done, because we're talking about at that point in time this summer having spent 160, 170 million pounds. Makes it a very, very big summer already, and they're going to need a little more significant sales to make that work. So that's in progress as well. The next thing, obviously, is youth and who may be involved. As we see, you have Ahmad, Palistri, who are with the first team, and Mainu, Forsen, who are with the first team. And then you have, like Hannibal and Gore and such, who are with the youth team. And what obviously stands out when you watch that Wrexham game is Hannibal Mejbri is a level above the youth team. He's proved that time and time again. That's been part of the issue. He's too good for the youth level. There's not more he's going to gain from playing at the youth level. He's matured from going on loan, even though the loan wasn't the best thing. He's still matured from going on loan and getting those senior minutes and playing in a real side. He's so talented. He was probably the best player on both teams. You don't want to lose him here. And so I think it's likely he's going to get a loan at this point. That's what it looks like when you base on how they split the squads up. But, they needed enough players for the youth team too. So that may be reading into it too much. But yeah, he needs a loan. I mean, he does. He needs a loan, a good loan, a first team in the Premier League. That's what he wants. So he can show he's got it, and then he could come into the side next year. And I think from that youth side, him, Alvaro Fernandez, and Gore are ones who obviously stand out. It was an interesting game. Obviously, Nathan Bishop had a kind of a wild moment in the beginning, which resulted in a punctured lung for the Wrexham striker. But I think it's very obvious who stood out there. And it's like that. And that's why I talked a lot about Hannibal in terms of the youth players, that he's not a youth player anymore. He needs to be a senior player. And this is where United have to improve and have to do better. And where they haven't at many times is getting these players who are better than youth to good loans and getting good development so they can get on track to the first team or show what they're worth before they stagnate. And for Hannibal, it's been a couple years like that. He was as good as Ahmad in the youth team a couple years ago when Ahmad was there briefly, and he just needs to take the next step. So if he's not going to play in the first team and get some minutes, then he needs a really good good loan to a good team. And that's going to be most important. He's one of the players that could definitely make it. You don't need a lot, but between him, Ahmad, and Mainu, and then Palistri, you've got 4 players who are very good that they've got to play or go to good first team so you can see what they can do. And they could really, come in there. And Mainu will probably stick around. So it's really the other 3. And those are the question marks right now, in my opinion, in terms of the youth players that could make it and could contribute to United. Of course, on to Madrid. The interesting part about tonight's game, and why I think it will be one of the most interesting games here, is that obviously you have all those youth players off. This is probably going to be the closest to the first team, right? Similar to, this is going to be the closest to the first team that we're getting in terms of the setup and rotation. Obviously, some of the players who joined late are been training a little longer now, so we may see a starting team here. Maybe here or maybe Vegas. One of these games will likely see as close to the starting 11 that we want to see to start the year. So we'll see, and I'm interested to see how that performs, especially against a team like Madrid. It should be a good one. And hopefully tonight that means we see the debut of Andre Onana, of course, as we're all still waiting to see. Mason Mount's been playing, putting in good performances. I think we're all ready to see Andre Onana in net. Not that Tom Heaton has been a scrub of any kind. He's been fantastic in his appearances. I've been so impressed. But, I think he should be able to go somewhere and be a first-choice keeper. He's very good. Very good. It's great to see it. So, yeah, I think we could see a very strong team tonight. But obviously, either way, it's going to be, interesting with all the youth players over there. I think the New York game was very interesting, but I think it will be, I think it'll be great. So let's wrap this up neatly here in a box. United have been in discussions with Rasmus Hojlund via intermediaries with Atalanta over the last number of days. They put in a first verbal offer. They've been regularly in talks. I've heard good progress. I've heard it's going well. I'm becoming very optimistic over the deal. But there's going to now need to be movement from Atalanta following that first verbal proposal to get a deal done. It'll likely, again, take a bit longer than it might seem and move into next week when the team returns back for John Murtaugh to get fully involved and probably wrap up the final details on this. That's just how the deals have been being done. But that's okay. Again, like Onana, don't worry about the time. Don't worry about the days. They're moving. The talks are occurring. It'll get done when it gets done. A big part of making sure that it does get done is Rasmus Hojlund maintaining his interest in joining specifically Manchester United. Amrabat, United well informed, not there yet. A lot of stuff has to happen first, and that fee is going to have to come down because it's not reasonable for what they expect or what they want from him. Good interest in Mctominay, and of course a few more preseason games to come. The last one here tonight until Las Vegas, and as a final reminder, we'll be there. I look forward to seeing anybody there at the game as well as at the United convention. I will be there on Sunday morning. There's a great brunch and a great pre-game party you can get tickets to that loads of people there, legends from the club, Andy Mitten, the Paddock boys, things like that. So definitely, if you're around on Sunday, I would recommend getting tickets and attending, and it'll be the best place before the game. So I hope to see you there. Okay, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.